right, hello. My name is Justin Kirkwood, and I'm a translator and Buddhist educator here at the Namchak Foundation. Last evening, we had the great pleasure of hosting Jetsunma giving a talk on the perfection of ethical discipline. And we here at Namchak decided that because the topic was quite advanced and a lot of our attendees were newer to the topic, that it would be a good idea for me to sit down and give a bit of a synopsis and a little bit of a recap on some of those topics that Jetsunma discussed. And so this video will serve as a bit of a refresh or a recap for those of you who attended last evening, and also as a bit of a prelude for those of you who are watching the full video of Jetsunma's teaching after the fact. And so the topic was the perfection of ethical discipline. And so when we talk about the perfection of ethical discipline, we're talking about a greater topic of something called the Six Perfections. And that practice of Six Perfections is a particular set of practices found within the Buddhist tradition. And so within the Buddhist tradition, we have some different varieties of paths that one could enter and practice. And so amongst those, there's a presentation called the Three Vehicles, or the Three Yanas is a Sanskrit word that you might hear Jetsunma use in her lecture. And those three are what we call often the foundational vehicle of Buddhism, which is also another way of referring to the Theravada schools, which are the schools of Buddhism that you'll find in Thailand and Myanmar and Sri Lanka and so forth, a lot of Southeast Asian countries. And then Mahayana Buddhism, which is the Buddhism that you will find in Tibet, Korea, Japan, parts of Vietnam, and so forth. And then the third is Vajrayana, or Tantric Buddhism, which you find in Tibet and also in Japan. And so Vajrayana Buddhism is kind of a subset of Mahayana Buddhism. So not all Mahayana Buddhists are Tantric Buddhists, but all Tantric Buddhists or Vajrayana Buddhists are Mahayana Buddhists. So when we are talking about the Six Perfections, we're talking about the middle of those, which is the Mahayana tradition. And the main difference between the Mahayana tradition and the foundational teachings of Buddhism, or the foundational vehicle of Buddhism, is the intention. And so in the foundational vehicle of teachings, the primary intention of one's practice is to free oneself from the cycle of suffering. So in Buddhist terminology, that's referred to as samsara. It's often in the tradition talked about as an ongoing cycle from lifetime to lifetime. So your consciousness is carrying on from one lifetime to a next in an unending cycle of suffering. And the only way to escape that is through attaining liberation through a path of meditation and so forth. And so when you do that with the intention just to free yourself, then that is the intention of the foundational vehicle of Buddhism, sometimes also referred to as the vehicle of individual liberation. And then Mahayana, when we move to the next step, Mahayana Buddhism is centered around this whole concept of the intention of bodhicitta. Bodhicitta means the mind of enlightenment, or the mind of awakening. And what that intention is the intention to free all beings from suffering and bring them all to the state of Buddhahood. So it's not merely a wish for my own freedom from suffering, but a wish to free all beings from suffering, and not just to temporarily make them feel better, but to bring them all the way to the state of enlightenment, to make them all Buddhas. So that is why it's called Mahayana. Refers to, it means the great vehicle, and the greatness is referred to from the perspective of the greatness of the intention as well as the greatness of the result, that people will not merely attain a liberation from suffering, but they will become fully enlightened beings. And then in Vajrayana, it carries that same bodhicitta intention as Mahayana, just using some slightly different methodology or practice methods and techniques to get you there in a quicker way, to get you to enlightenment in a quicker way. And as well as quicker methods for getting yourself there, as well as for helping others to get there. And so now the topic of the Six Perfections are a particular set of trainings in the Mahayana tradition. So when we talk about that attitude of bodhicitta, that wish to determination or wish or commitment to free all beings from suffering and bring them to the state of Buddhahood, in that mind of bodhicitta, or the practices of bodhicitta, there are two aspects to that. There's aspirational bodhicitta, which is developing the wish to free all beings and bring them to enlightenment. Then there's engaged bodhicitta, or active bodhicitta. And so the active bodhicitta, or engaged bodhicitta, refers to the practices of the six perfections. And so last month, there was a lecture given. I myself gave the lecture on the perfection of generosity. And the month before that, Lama Tsomo gave a lecture about bodhicitta and the practice of the bodhisattva in general. And so now we're moving month by month through these practices of the six perfections. And so the current topic that Jetsunma discussed last evening was the perfection of ethical discipline. And so that practice then involves, in the tradition, generally speaking, certain types of conduct. So how one conducts oneself. And in the most general term, when we say ethical discipline, within the tradition itself, we're talking about a code of conduct that involves taking vows, making some kind of commitment to avoid certain types of behavior, to engage in other kinds of behavior, and on a certain level to view reality in a particular kind of way. And so in the Tibetan Buddhist tradition, we take vows which are associated with all three levels of those vehicles that I mentioned before. So there are kinds of vows which are called the individual liberation vows, which are those vows of foundational Buddhism. There are vows of Mahayana, which are called the Bodhisattva vows. And then there are a particular type of Mahayana vows called Vajrayana vows, which are also called Samaya. That's the Sanskrit word for a Vajrayana vow, or commitment. Sometimes we translate that word as sacred commitment. And so when we are talking about ethical discipline in the practice of the Bodhisattva, or within the context of the six perfections, we're talking about all three levels of those vows. Or we're talking about whichever levels of vows one is actually trying to practice and one has taken the commitments for. But generally speaking, people who have reached a certain level of practice within the Tibetan tradition will already be practicing Vajrayana or Tantric Buddhism. And as you'll hear Jetsunma explain, or as you heard her explain last night, when you receive an empowerment, which is the kind of ritual for engaging in Vajrayana Buddhism, together with that empowerment, you receive all three sets of vows. You will receive individual liberation vows, bodhisattva vows, as well as tantric vows. So what are these individual liberation vows, or vows associated with the foundational vehicle of Buddhism? Those are, as Jetsunma explained last night, or will explain in this video as you watch, there are 7 or 8 types, and those are categorized in that way because they're distinguished by like the monastic vow versus the for men versus the monastic or nun's vow for women. And so there are vows of individual liberation also for lay people like us, and so not only for monastics. So in that we have something that is called the Genyin in Tibetan. It is the layperson's vows, and those layperson's vows are of 2 kinds. There's one which is a kind of a temporary vow, which means that you can take those vows for 1 day only. And Jetsunma will explain exactly what those vows are in the video. But then you could also not just take those for 1 day, you can take the layperson's vows for your whole lifetime. And when you take layperson's vows, there's generally 5. In the 1 day vow version, there are 8, but generally speaking, there's 5. And those 5 are not killing, not lying, not stealing, not practicing sexual misconduct, and not using intoxicants. But when you take those vows, were you to take those vows, you don't have to take all 5. You can take any combination of them, or even just one. And so when someone takes the layperson's vows, that would be when someone kind of formally becomes a Buddhist, usually like in a refuge ceremony or even in a tantric empowerment. When someone would do that, then you can choose to say, okay, I am only able right now to take the vow of not killing, for example. And in that instance, you're not bound by the other vows of not using intoxicants and so forth. So anyway, that covers layperson's vows. And then in addition to that, you have novice monastic vows, and then fully ordained monastic vows for men and women. And then there's this one special type of training, which is called a nun in training type of vow, where there's a particular set of vows that nuns have to keep as they are before they take their full ordination for a couple of years while they're training to become a fully ordained nun. And so those are the vows of individual liberation. And so then, in addition to the vows of individual liberation, which are mainly about avoiding certain things, they're commitments not to do something, we take these vows of the Bodhisattva, Mahayana vows or Bodhisattva vows. And so you might think that because we're talking about discipline in terms of the six perfections, and the six perfections are a subset of Mahayana practice, that we would only need these Mahayana vows. But in the Tibetan tradition, like I said before, and like Jetsunma talked about in the video, we maintain and sustain all three sets of vows: individual liberation, individual liberation, Mahayana vows, as well as tantric vows. So where the vows of individual liberation are mainly about avoiding negativity, the vows of the Mahayana are often more about maintaining some kind of attitude of wishing for the happiness of others. So there are some which are about avoiding certain things, but more often the Bodhisattva vows are talked about from the perspective of Jetsunma emphasized this point in the video, not just avoiding the negativity, but engaging in its opposite. Like, instead of not just protecting the vow of not lying, but to speak truthfully, and so forth. And so there's more to that. And if you want to study the Bodhisattva vows in particular, there are a number of great texts that you could read. The Ornament of Precious Liberation is one. The Treasury of Precious Qualities is another great text which covers that. That's a 2-volume book, but just you would only need the first volume for that topic. And so that is the second set of vows, or the Bodhisattva vows. In addition to that, we have the vows of Vajrayana or Tantric Samaya, as I said, the sacred commitments, which are more about a way of viewing reality than they are a particular way of conduct. There is some conduct in that, but they're more about training yourself to see things in a particular way, and we say a pure way. And so that's kind of the connection between how we have vows, which are associated with the three vehicles, or the three spiritual approaches of Tibetan Buddhism, or of Buddhism in general, I should say, and how we incorporate all three of those kinds of aspects of ethical discipline within the perfection of ethical discipline, which is a subset of the path of the Bodhisattva, or is a Mahayana practice. So even within a Mahayana, so-called Mahayana path of the six perfections, we're still working with and maintaining vows which are associated with the foundational vehicle, or the individual liberation vehicle of Buddhism. And so another couple things that Jetsunma mentioned are the emphasis of vows, like, so if you've taken all three vows, individual liberation vows, Bodhisattva vows, and tantric vows, there are times when those might seem at odds with each other. Like, for example, you've taken a vow. A common example that people will give is you've taken a vow not to lie, but in a certain circumstance, you might have to lie to protect someone's life. Like, for example, let's say someone is chasing another person and they're going to kill this person. The person running away goes past you and you know where they went. But when the killer comes to you and asks, did you see this person? Which way did they go? It's more important in that moment for a bodhisattva, a person practicing the six perfections, a person who has bodhisattva vows, it's more important for them to save that person's life than it is to keep their vow of not lying. So in that instance, in the Buddhist tradition, it is permitted to break the individual liberation vow to protect the bodhisattva vow of wishing for the liberation from suffering of all beings and so forth. So there are times when there is a seeming contradiction in the vows, and when that is the case, then you have to keep the higher vow if you are able to. And so there's a certain emphasis on that if you are able to, because Jetsunma emphasizes this as well, that there are some people who take the fact that they are practicing Tantra as an excuse to ignore the lower vows, when they haven't actually attained the realization or the experiences or and so forth of that practice of Vajrayana, and but they use that as an excuse to disregard the practices of individual liberation and the general protection of the Mahayana vow. And so that's a very dangerous situation. Jetsunma gives a particular example for herself about dancing and so forth that you'll see in the video, or that you already heard in the video. And another thing that she mentioned just in passing, which is maybe something that could have thrown you all for a bit of confusion, is that there is an example given about one of the Buddha's past lives. So there are a lot of these stories of the Buddha's past lives before he attained enlightenment, and there's one story where he was on this boat. I think he was the captain of the boat, and there was a pirate or someone on that boat who was going to kill 500 people who were on the ship. And the Buddha knew that he was going to kill those people, and so in order to prevent that guy himself, the murderer, from having to experience the karmic retribution of killing 500 people, as well as in order to protect all of those 500 people from being killed, the Buddha killed the murderer before he could do it. And so there's a lot of discussion about that, about what kind of qualifications it would take for someone to be in that position and be able to know with certainty that that action is going to, is going to be a net benefit, or that it is justified. And so it's not saying, this example isn't usually brought up as an example to say you should kill people to protect other people, but kind of as an example to show that when there is a greater cause to be served, the lesser vows can be disregarded or can be broken, and there's no fault in breaking them if you are doing it with a greater purpose, with a purpose that is going to bring a greater benefit. And so I know that's a slippery slope, and we talked about that a little bit, and you'll see that discussion in the video if you haven't seen it yet, about that. And so one of the great teachers in our lineage, his name was Guru Rinpoche, or Padmasambhava is another one of his names. He said, even though my view is as vast as the sky, I keep my conduct as fine as barley flour. What he means by that is that even though he has a very deep and profound understanding of reality, like that in Buddhist tradition, we talk a lot about that everything is empty, nothing has inherent true existence, everything's like a dream or an illusion, but don't use that as an excuse to disregard how your conduct affects other people and how your conduct even affects you. If you haven't fully realized that expansive view, then every little bit of your conduct is still setting up habitual patterns, karmic patterns, and so forth in your mind. And even if you have realized that yourself, then how other people see you might affect their view upon, for example, like this comes back to Jetsunma's example. Like Jetsunma said that there are certain situations where the nuns at the nunnery, after a particular type of ritual, will kind of sing and dance. But technically in the monastic vows for nuns, you're not allowed to sing and dance. And so there are certain times when, because it's a part of this tantric celebration, that you should do that, but Jetsunma still chooses not to for herself, because she says if the wrong person were to see her singing and dancing, and let's say they put a video of that up on social media or something, it would cause them to have a wrong view of the nuns. They would start thinking that these nuns have really bad behavior, or that nuns are allowed to sing and dance or whatever. So it's not necessarily for her. It's not that singing and dancing is going to corrupt Jetsunma's conduct or her mind or her negative emotions or whatever. She has, from my perspective as a student of hers, she has a view that transcends that. But for the protection of the integrity or the reputation of the Sangha, of the monastic community, she chooses not to do that. And so that's kind of some of these ways that there are some complex situations when you get into discussing the three different types of ethical discipline, or the three different types of vow, and how those can intersect or even potentially on a certain level contradict, and how you as a practitioner have to kind of navigate that. So I think that pretty much covers it. And I hope that this serves as a bit of a good wrap up for those of you who joined us last night. And for those of you who are just coming to this video, I hope this serves as a good introduction for you to better enjoy and understand and appreciate Jetsunma's lovely discussion about the perfection of ethical discipline.
It's nice to see all of you here. So I must say good evening to all of you. But here it's good morning. Like it's already 5:06 a.m. Okay, so these days I'm in India, in Siliguri, which is in the state of West Bengal, and it's situated in the northeast side of India. So I've been here for like almost 2 months, and so I hope during this teaching, I hope the electricity would run smoothly, because as you know, in India, like we don't have like the facilities of those electricity, the internet not that good. So that's why I hope there won't happen any kind of glitches here. Let's hope for the best. Okay, so let me first start with the prayers to my gurus. Gewa gunju rinji daizu, kana kansa mili kabara jiwa, tambi desu gizu tajimba, gizu mlama namla chaza, no, kada shingi gumba untuju, lundu na shi ishi tari jingi, padengi na jeso semba, uye chancho shabla, sowa de, damba dembe mentul damba ye jeso sanga demba shiruki, zina dare kada sume ye unju, pande lama, sowa de, yende sangi gunda nyamna yang, kada sangi gunda. Dambe bari to chukura shi denze ba, zavi la me shabla sowa, Nelu doba gewa chinge lo disum sange tam chege ngo rida kengo kyaso kyabda patila na mache penge la me shab dultima me pala gosum ji kuba chimbo go ne chakse shinge so cheo chinge la do so manam gada nyembe senje tanje tendela na me go bana go par chawa wo nyembe chanchu chodo to gene sembar shu. So foremost, I would like to request all of you to please generate the bodhicitta intention while you are in this session. And so whenever the session starts, it has to be conditioned with the three major essence. The first, before starting the session or session of teaching or the session of your own practices, first we have to start with the intention or motivation of bodhicitta. And while you are in the session or while you are in the session of your own practices, it is mandatory to have it conditioned with the intention of emptiness or the what do you call the non-grasping side of practices. And at the end, it is important for us to dedicate whatever merits we have earned through teachings or like through practices. So it's very important for all of us to be put these three conditions while we are in any kind of practices. Right, so I would like to request all of you to do that same. And so foremost, I think you guys have already learned or taught about the first perfection, which is generosity. So I'm just resuming from wherever it's left. You guys have already taught about the perfection of generosity. So I'm picking from the perfection of ethical discipline or moral discipline. Okay, so great master Nagarjuna said that moral discipline is like a land. It's like a land, because land is the base of all the animated and unanimated entities, right? So likewise, the moral discipline is also the base of all the qualities or all the accomplishments. So that's why the moral discipline is like a foundation to all the kinds of practices, right? Okay, so according to the right or direct teaching of Lord Buddha, let me relate this perfection of ethical discipline to his teaching, because Lord Buddha, when he was enlightened, he taught these three kinds of three excellent trainings, right? So Lord Buddha taught three excellent trainings in his in his three main scripture. The scripture of Vinaya, scripture of Sutra, and scripture of Abhidharma. So the three excellent trainings are the training in the highest moral practice, training in the highest meditation practice, and the training in the highest wisdom practice. So those three are considered as the three excellent trainings. So those are the main thing in, if you condense all the teachings of Lord Buddha, you find all teachings are based on those three trainings, right? The training of meditation, the training of wisdom, the training of moral practice or moral discipline, right? Okay, so now let me show you where these three trainings are taught in scripture of Buddhism. So the training in the highest moral practice is mentioned in the scripture of Vinaya. To eliminate the desire in us. And the training in the highest meditation practice is showed in the sutra scripture to eliminate or obliterate the anger in us. And the training in the highest wisdom practice is showed in Abhidharma scripture to expel the ignorance. So that's why those three excellent trainings are practiced to obliterate the three poisons, right? The poison of desire, anger, and ignorance. So that's why we can relate in that way. Okay, now let's come back to the perfection of ethical discipline. So here it's important for us to know how to discern or distinct between the perfection of ethical discipline and the general ethical discipline of Buddhism, right? So when it shows the perfection of ethical disciplines, means we have to understand that that kind of practice or discipline is associated with the bodhisattva practices, because of labeling it as a perfection. So if you understand the general ethical discipline, or if we talk about the general ethical discipline, it won't be combined with the term of perfection, right? So the perfection thing is, the term perfection is, it makes a quite difference between the practices of Bodhisattva yana and the foundational vehicle. You can call it Mahayana or Bodhisattva yana, versus the foundational vehicle or Hinayana, right? So that's why the term perfection, when you combine it with the ethical discipline practices, we have to immediately know how to differentiate between the without perfection of ethical discipline and with perfection of ethical discipline. Okay, so now what does it mean by perfection? Perfection, or sometimes it is called transcendence, like to transcend, right? So perfection means to across the samsara, to across the samsara ethic, or to across the samsara practices, or you can say to across the ocean of samsara, which means that you have already overcome these samsaric things, right? Okay, so here, when we practice the ethical discipline, if we grasp, if we grasp the threefold of ethical discipline, such as the subject, the object, and the action. If we grasp all these threefold practice as a reality or true existence, then it becomes a general ethical discipline. Okay, for let's say, for example, if you are practicing generosity, right? The perfection of generosity. So when you do the act of generosity, or let's say if you are giving something to someone, so in that practice, there are threefold, right? So the first thing is the giver, which is the subject, and to whom you give is the object, right? And the action of giving. So those subject, object, and the action are called the threefold practices, right? So if you are attached or you grasp to the threefold of practices, then your generosity is not considered as the perfection of generosity. Instead, it would be just the act of generosity. So in that way, you can relate it to all the six great perfection. Okay, so that's just a clarification, but I will explain it in detail afterward. But that's just the introduction of why we called the ethical discipline as a perfection of ethical discipline. Okay, so now this perfection of ethical discipline is the teaching that I'm doing right now is extracted from the Bodhisattvayana's vow or Bodhisattvayana's practice, right? So the Bodhisattva vow is known as the inner vow. So there are three kinds of vow. So when you practice the ethical discipline, we have to understand the vows too, right? Discipline are the precepts. But then when you follow the precepts, we have to know the vow, the names of vow, you know. So that's why in Buddhism, there are three kinds of vow: the outer vow, inner vow, and the secret vow, right? So right now, I will explain about the inner vow of Bodhisattva. So the inner vow of Bodhisattva is built on the practice of aspiration, motivation or aspiration, and application of bodhicitta, right? So if we categorize the inner vow of Bodhisattva into two ways, then it will be the practice of aspiration bodhicitta and application of bodhicitta, right? Aspiration and application. So the aspirational bodhicitta practice is mainly based on mind training on four immeasurables, right? Loving kindness, immeasurable training; compassion, immeasurable training; rejoicement, immeasurable training; and the equality or equanimity, immeasurable training. So those four immeasurable practices are known as aspirational bodhicitta practice. Okay, so now let's move to the application of bodhicitta, right? So when you practice the application of bodhicitta, the practices are categorized into six great perfection, known as six great perfection. So those six great perfection are generosity, morality, patience, effort, concentration, and wisdom. So those six practices are considered the perfection of six great perfection. Six great practices, right? Okay, so in the perfection of morality, which is today's topic of subject, in that certain practices of morality, all others 5 great perfection are included. So we should know that, right? So today, in today's topic, which is the perfection of ethical discipline, all other 5 perfections are included in today's topic, right? So let me remind you. I know that you have already gone through the perfection of generosity before this teaching. So let me just remind you what are the 6 great perfection. So let me introduce in a very let me just highlight it. Okay, so the perfection of generosity, which is the first perfection, is rooted in the unattached mind. Unattached mind, right? I'm sorry, I'm having suffering from mild cold, so that's why. Okay, so unattached mind. Generosity is rooted in the unattached mind that is associated with the meritorious intention. For example, to help ourselves and the people around us by understanding the value of our generous act. When we understand the value of our own generous act, and if we put into the practice, then that is the generosity, right? So Shantideva, great master Shantideva, said that first start the practice of generosity by just merely giving some vegetables. Like you can give like small things like vegetable or like pen, pencil, or like, book, the small things. And eventually you will have the potential to give your organs, which are very important to us, right? So in that way, like first start with the small things, just start with giving small things. So the thing is here, when you give or donate, or when you help people with objects, we have to have the detached mind. So whenever like we give, then again we begin to sometimes like we regret, I shouldn't have given it to that person, or that person seems very mean, so those kind of regret, it happens sometimes when we have already given or like help other people. So that's why it says whenever you give, it should be associated with the unattached mind. Okay, so that is just the small introduction about the perfection of generosity. And the second perfection is morality, right? So here Shantideva said that to have the determination to abandon the negative conducts, and this practice has to be associated with the meritorious intention, and that is the perfection of moral discipline or ethical discipline, which means we should have the intention to abandon the negative conduct, thoughts or behavior, whatever it occurs in our mind. So that is the what do you call the key point, of morality, which is the intention to abandon the negative thoughts or actions. Okay, so then patience. The act of patience means to keep our mind undisturbed, by any situation, whether it can be like problematic situation, or it can be just a neutral situation, or sometimes people, they get even overwhelmed or excited with the positive situations too, right? So that's why to keep our mind undisturbed by any kind of situation is the act of patience. And on that, to adopt a healthy and ethical lifestyle, despite any difficulties we face, is also an act of patience, which will result in an undisturbed mind and behavior, behavior behavior that is called the patience too. So it can be understood through different ways, right? Okay, so now let me highlight the perfection of effort. That's the fourth perfection, right? Effort. So effort is about having passion and interest in practicing merit, which will make us more consistent or persistent. So the effort is all about having the passion and interest in doing or in whatever practice you engage into, no? Okay. So the fifth perfection is the perfection of concentration, or you can say the perfection of meditation. So concentration is an undistracted mind that is associated with the root of meritorious intention. And it should be guided with the concentration should be supported, or this supporting element is mindfulness and vigilance power. So those two things are very important for us, mindfulness and vigilance, or sometimes it is called awareness, right? So mindfulness, you can say mindfulness and awareness. So those two things are the key element when you practice the concentration or meditation. Okay, now comes the sixth great perfection, which sixth great perfection, which is the perfection of wisdom. Okay, so in when you practice wisdom, it is must to have the discerning knowledge that can differentiate between the positivity and negativity. You know, so that's why. So those are the just a brief explanation on the sixth great perfection. And so today we are going to talk about, so let me go back to the perfection of ethical discipline. Okay, so the perfection of ethical discipline is to have the intention to discard all those habits of thinking, habits of conducting, you know, habits that damage ourselves and the beings around us, sentient beings around us, right? So that is the intention. And moral discipline, it consists of far-sighted willpower. So willpower, we should have, it's must to have the willpower to achieve the goal, you know. So if you are practicing the foundational vehicle, you should have the goal to achieve to across the samsara, or you should have the you should set the goal to achieve the arhat. If you are in Bodhisattva vehicle, your goal is to achieve the enlightenment, right? So in that way, there would be a whenever you practice the discipline, of course, there would be some goal that you will be you will be setting on. So let's say if we want to shed some weight, you will go to gym, and you know, you will take care of your diet. So there would be a certain kind of a goal, you know, that is already been set. So in that way, you will be more routine, and you will be more disciplined, self-disciplined, right? So that's why. So while practicing moral practice, it's important to have the willpower to achieve that goal, and on that, passion, right, and conscience, self-control. And more importantly, the pledge of commitment. Commitment is very important. So that's why here it says moral discipline, it consists of far-sighted willpower to achieve the goal, right? And it consists of patience, conscience, self-control, and pledge of commitment. On that, additionally, we also need wisdom to discern between life with discipline and life without discipline, right? So we need that discerning knowledge to distinguish between with discipline and without discipline, and their consequences respectively, the consequences of having life with discipline and consequences of having life without discipline, right? And then we definitely need mindfulness and awareness to control ourselves. So the mindfulness, we would be able to generate the mindfulness only when we are focused, right? When we are concentrated. So that's why the concentration is also associated with the mindfulness and awareness. So when we are focused and when we are mindful, then only we can control ourselves. And so in that way, we can engage ourselves into the self-discipline. So those are some of those factors that I have mentioned are very important for us to follow the ethical discipline, whether in our personal life or in like in a community of like workplace or education center, even in relationship also, no? So that's why the self-discipline is very important. So then the thing is, if our wisdom leads the practice of ethical discipline, then it will be a mass benefit, it will generate more benefit. But if the ignorant mind lead the morality, then it will damage us. It will damage both the parties, damage ourselves and the people around us too. So that's why it's important for us to have the wisdom. Okay, so the sixth great perfection, the order of sixth great perfection, like first generosity, then morality, then patience, effort, concentration, and the wisdom. The order it is placed, how it is mentioned in order. That order, it depends on the convenience, So from the sixth great perfection, the most convenient or most easiest thing to perform is the generosity. So that's why it's placed at the first, on the first, right? So that's why the order of all the six great perfection are placed according to our own convenience, or like according to how easily it can be practiced. So that's why the wisdom is placed at the last, right? Which is the sixth perfection of wisdom is placed on the last. So that's why so it is considered like a bit what do you call, we need a substantial practice, before going to the perfection of wisdom. So that's why it is placed at the last. Okay, so in simple term, the discipline is all about self-control, to apply self-control on our thoughts, to apply self-control with our behaviors, manners, by knowing what to abandon and what to adopt, So that's why the self-control, to apply this self-control, before applying this self-control, is must to know what should be abandoned and what should be adopted, right? So that is the, in simple term, that is the discipline that we are talking about. Okay, so that is the just a brief explanation. So let's move to the perfection, right? What is perfection? Perfection means the mind that is free from all the threefold concept. Mind that is free from threefold concept of subject, of object, and the action. And that transcends both the concept of samsara and nirvana, So that's why it's called the perfection, because it is not corrupted or like stained with the concept of samsara or the concept to attain the nirvana. So it transcends both the extreme side of samsara and nirvana. So that's why it's called the perfection. Okay. So now the question is how to apply, implement the perfection. So if we want to practice the perfection, it is important for us to know about the practice of emptiness. So only through knowing the essence of emptiness, we can free our thought and action from the threefold concept of subject, object, and action, right? Okay, so now, in our topic of ethical discipline, it's more about like rejecting, it's more about adopting, acceptance and rejection of the precepts of a certain vow, right? So it's more about like abandoning the demerit or negative deeds or action, or like kind of applying, or implementing the positive deeds or merit. So the question is, how do you differentiate between, how do you identify the merit and demerit in Buddhism? Okay, so what is the positive and negative, or what is the demerit and merit in the Buddhist point of view? So here Nagarjuna said that an act or intention that arises from anger, desire, and ignorance is demerit. And an act or intention that do not arise from anger, desire, and ignorance is merit. So it's vice versa, right? So that is how we, so sometimes people ask, how do you identify, or how do you differentiate between or how do you define between positive and negative action? So so Nagarjuna said that, I have already explained whatever Nagarjuna has said. So the act of intention that arises from poison or defilement is demerit, and vice versa. Okay, so in the text of relaxing in the natural state of mind, Master Longchen Ramjam said that control yourself through superior moral discipline. Then you will attain the virtuous mind and finally enlightenment. Okay. Okay, so now let's talk about the types of ethical discipline. So Master Longchen Ramjam said that bodhisattvas always follow 3 types of moral discipline. So those are, the first one is to refrain ourselves from malpractices, or refrain ourselves from the negative practices or negative action, right? So that is the first moral discipline. The second one is to gather all the virtuous dharmic activities. To gather all the virtuous activities is the second ethical discipline. And the third one is to benefit sentient being. So those are the 3 categories of moral discipline. And likewise, there are also 3 kinds of vow related to those 3 types of moral discipline. The first one is outer individual liberation vow. Individual liberation vow is considered as the outer vow. And the inner vow is bodhicitta vow. And the secret vow is Vajrayana vow, so that's where there are like 3 different kinds of vow. The outer vow of individual liberation, inner vow of bodhicitta vow, and the secret vow is the Vajrayana vow. Okay, now let's focus on the outer individual liberation vow. So outer individual liberation vow, the first example is the vow that is followed by monks and nuns. So it's not just bound to monks and nuns, even the lay practitioner can also take the outer individual liberation vow. So we will mention the outer individual liberation vow later in so okay, now first the outer individual liberation vow help us to refrain ourselves from attempting the known virtuous action, right? That's why it is the first moral discipline of abstaining or refraining from malpractices. And the second vow is the bodhicitta vow, right? So in bodhicitta vow, we have to restrain ourselves from the non-virtuous activities, and plus we have to benefit others. So in the first vow, it hasn't mentioned about benefiting others. The first vow of individual liberation practice is only about abandoning, refraining oneself from negative action. But in the bodhicitta vow, it has mentioned about, to benefit others, which is the additional practice on the individual liberation vow, right? So that's why in the bodhicitta vow, it is considered a bit superior to the individual liberation vow, because in that particular vow, it has mentioned about benefiting the others too. So in that way, we need to differentiate between the intention or the intention when you follow the vow, when you act on the vows. Okay, so in the bodhicitta vow, we restrain ourselves from the non-virtuous action, and additionally, we have to benefit others. And so in that way, we practice the two accumulations of merit and wisdom. So in that way, we accumulate the merit and wisdom as well through the inner bodhicitta vow. And we raise the quality of six great perfection. So that is called the inner vow of bodhicitta. Okay, now let's move to the third vow of Vajrayana. So in third vow of Vajrayana, we make effort to sow the seed of virtue in others. We make effort to sow the seed of virtue in others in order to attain the liberation through skillful means, in bodhicitta, in Vajrayana, most of the practices are based on the method, the skillful way, how you practice it in skillful way. So that's why that practice is the Vajrayana vow. Okay, so now let's align these three moral discipline with the three vows, right? The first moral discipline is the abandoning the negative action, right, or negative practices. So that first moral practice is related with the vow of the first vow, which is the individual liberation vow. Okay, now the second moral practice is to gather the virtuous action, right? That second moral practice is related with the second vow, that is a bodhicitta, inner bodhicitta vow. Okay, now the third one is to benefit more sentient being, and that third moral discipline is associated with the vow of Vajrayana. So in that way, we have to relate those three types of moral discipline with the three vows. Okay, now ethic. So those ethical discipline or moral discipline can be interpreted, construed differently in the various paths of Buddhism. So Buddhism has like so many different paths. Like there are also, like if you explain it in detail, there are 9 vehicles, 9 paths But if you condense it, it is known to have like three major path or vehicle, right? So which are foundational vehicle, bodhicitta vehicle, and vajrayana vehicle. So the moral discipline, it can be explained or interpreted in three different ways because of having the three different path of Buddhism, right? So whenever like we teach about the moral discipline, it has to be explained according to a certain path, or whether it has to be from the concept of foundational vehicle, or it has to be from the concept of bodhicitta vehicle and or vajrayana vehicle, right? So that's why we cannot generalize when we talk about the ethical discipline. We cannot generalize that certain precepts can be valid in all the three path or all the three vehicles. So we need to discern distinct, so that's why here it says like ethic can be construed or like interpreted differently in the various path of Buddhism. Okay, so in the so the first path, let me explain the first path in brief. In the foundational vehicle or path, foundational vehicle, Hinayana, or foundational vehicle, or we can say path 2. In that vehicle, all the non-virtuous actions and thoughts are supposed to be forbidden. Like we are restricted from all the non-virtuous actions and thoughts, right? But in the bodhicitta or bodhisattva vehicle or path, non-virtuous actions are permitted. Sometimes it's permissive. If you are performing that non-virtuous action to benefit other, then it is permissible. It's permissive, right? But then the negative thoughts are not permitted at all, so only the negative actions are permitted. If you are doing that action to help others, then it's permissive, but the negative thoughts are not allowed at all, because the bodhisattva vehicle itself is based on the intention or the power of your thought. So that's why if your thoughts or intention are corrupted, then like you are transgressing the bodhicitta vow. So that's why the negative thoughts are not permissive at all in bodhicitta, but negative actions are permissible. Okay, so so in Tantrayana vehicle, those non-virtuous action and thoughts are not restricted at all. Instead, it is considered as the resource, considered as the cause to generate wisdom. So then the question is why, why all those non-virtuous negative activities and thoughts are not restricted in that certain vehicle? And the answer, it is because if you know, or if you are realized, or if you know the method of how to turn that certain non-virtuous action or thought into a merit or into a wisdom, then only it's applicable. Otherwise, these days in most of the people, in the name of tantric practice, they just manipulate that name, and without having any kind of substantial practices or realization, they just claim to be a tantric practitioner, and they practice those negative actions. So before claiming yourself as a authentic, genuine tantric practitioner, first we have to analyze ourselves. We have to examine ourselves whether we have that certain realization, whether we have certain confidence in our practices or not. So that's why. So here it says, non-virtues are not restricted. It becomes a cause. It becomes a resource for us to amplify, to increase wisdom, only if we know the method of mantra, only if we know the method of meditation, only if we know the method of mudras. So only through the method of mantra, mudra, and meditation, we can turn that certain non-virtuous thing into a resource, as a resource for the realization in tantric vehicle. Okay, for example, it's like putting oil into the fire. It will just intensify the oil. So that's why the abandoning or restriction, whatever that is based on the precepts, is not available in tantric vehicle. Only if you are well realized, you have certain kind of confidence in your practice, then only it's applicable. Otherwise, like we have to follow all those precepts accordingly. Okay, so now there are two types of practitioner, right? Two types of practitioner: lay practitioner, or we can say monk or nun practitioner. Male lay practitioner, female lay practitioner, or monk and nun practitioner. Okay, so the now question is, what vow should lay people and monks and nuns should take or follow? So lay people can follow the lay precepts of individual liberation vow. So out of the three vows, lay people can follow the outer individual liberation vow. On that, lay people can also follow the inner bodhicitta vow and the secret vajrayana vow. And it's same to the monks and nuns too. Monks and nuns can follow the ordination of individual liberation vow and inner bodhicitta vow and vajrayana vow. So those people, whether it's lay people or monks or nun, whoever bears all the three vows are called Vajra holder of three vows. They are known as Vajra holder of three vows. Those people who have all those three vows, so they are known as Vajra holder of three vows. Okay, so now the okay, so now the question is, when a person has all those three vows, so the vows, it will from the surface, it will seem like it will look like all those three vows contradict with each other, because in the outer individual vow, it is more about abandoning those negative activities, right? Activities, thoughts. And inner bodhicitta vow, it is it concentrates more about on the side of benefiting others rather than focusing on abandoning the negative thoughts and actions, right? So in the Vajrayana vow, it says like, if you have that kind of have the realization and know the method, then you can turn the essence of all those negative into positive, right? So on the surface, it will look like all those three vows contradict with each other, clashes with each other, because some vow says do that, and some says like it's permissive, some says like you can do this and that. So in that case, when some people are like confused what to do when all those three vows clashes with each other outwardly, for those it is mentioned in the text of treasure of quality, right? Precious quality, or like it's also mentioned in like different texts that first thing is the upper vow. So the out of the three vows, the topmost or the most superior is considered the vow of Vajrayana. So here it says like we have to consider the highest vow, or the highest vow is the priority. So that's why we have to follow the precepts of Vajrayana. And then the Bodhisattva precepts of Bodhisattva vow, and then only the precepts of individual liberation vow. So that's why it says like the priority is the vow of Vajrayana. So then okay, so now let me give you an example. In individual liberation vow, we are totally forbidden to steal or to kill, right? Or those are considered like very heavy kind of demerit. But then in Bodhisattva vow, it says that you can kill someone only if it is benefiting others. It is benefiting that certain person who is attempting the heavy negative action. Then only you can kill or you can steal, So that is the what do you call exception in the bodhicitta vow. So that's why the one vow says not to kill, one vow says you can kill, and one vow says there's no restriction at all in the Vajrayana vow. So that's why we have to work according to the situation, and we have to, and more important, we have to practice according to the our own ability, our own power, or our own potential of intention. What kind of intention you have? If you only have the intention to attain happiness, if you only have the intention to across the samsara, then it is considered the intention of foundational vehicle, right? So in that case, the bodhicitta the intention of bodhicitta is considered more superior to that foundational vehicle's intention. So that's why when we practice or when we follow the ethical discipline, on that, if you have all the three vows and it seems contradict from outside, then you have to decide from your own potential, like how much power or how much realization you have, how much confident you have if you perform that non-virtuous action. So in that way, it depends on oneself or our own confidence or our realization, how much you can do, how much you can to what extent we can follow the moral discipline. So that's why all the so they are like various, there are numerous like kind of precepts, but you have to pick according to your own potential and your own realization. But then the highest priority, priority is the highest vow of Vajrayana. If you have that kind of certain potential in you, then you have to apply the Vajrayana practices. So if you have the full power to benefit other, then you can apply the bodhicitta vow. So in that way, it says like if you don't utilize your potential, if you don't utilize your the ability, then it will be a bigger kind of demerit or for us if we don't apply it, even though we have the ability. So that's why that those are the answer how when you are confused and when you have all those the three vows. So there is I got a question from my friend. She's a student of mine, and she was like asking me, Jetsunma, when we dance, we dance after finishing a ritual, was tantric ritual. Usually to celebrate it, we usually dance and sing. Then she would say, oh, Jetsunma, why don't you dance and sing? Because she was curious why I'm not singing and dancing along with our students when we celebrate the end of important ritual. So person like me who hold all the three vows, we according to the first vow, we are not allowed to sing and dance, not allowed to wear ornaments, makeup, and those perfume and all those, which means like we are forbidden to do that. Those kind of things. Then again, according to the tantric vow, we are allowed to dance and sing when we celebrate. When we celebrate, so those are the things like it contradicts. When you have all those three vows. So that's the answer to that question. When you are confused or when you yeah. Okay, I think I'm deviating from the topic. Okay, so okay, so okay, now let's talk about the vows, right? The outer vow of individual liberation. It is called the individual liberation because this practice is solely based on the happiness of oneself, So most of the practices or meditation is based on attaining a goal that is limited just for the individual or self. So that's why it's called individual liberation vow. So this vow is mostly the main practice of foundational vehicle. Okay, so there are 8 or sometimes 7 kinds of individual liberation vow. So the first 2 of this vow is related to the lay practitioner. So the first vow is vow of one-day practitioner, which means in this one of this category is the practitioner practice that's vow for only for a day. And the second one is the lay male or female practitioner that follows 5 precepts, or you can follow like 3, 2, or 1 precept till the end of your life. So those 2 vows of individual liberation, first and second, are meant to be followed by the lay practitioner. And the third one is the novice vow of monk and nun. And so the other vow is the fully ordained vow of monk and nun. And the last one is vow for the nun of pre-ordination. So this last vow is like kind of getting ready to get the fully ordained vow. So for that part, like the certain nun has to go under the pre-ordination practices for two years before taking the full ordination, So that's why, so those are the sometimes 7 or 8 kinds of individual vow. Okay, so let me emphasize on the practice precepts of lay people, lay people. So here, according to the precepts that should be followed by the lay practitioner in the individual liberation. So those they have like 5 precepts to follow if you wanna take the vow of individual liberation. Then you have to follow the 5 precepts: not to kill, not to steal, not to lie, and not to engage in sexual misconduct or immorality. And the last thing is not to use intoxicants, substances. So if you can follow any of this vow till the end of your life, or if you can follow all of those 5 major precepts till the end of end of your life, then that is called the lay practitioner who follows the 5 precepts, right? So those are called the Genyin. So Genyin, right? So which means the lay practitioner, those who follow the or any of these 5 precepts or all of these 5 precepts. Okay. So again, the lay practitioner who follows the precepts only for a day, for those people, they have to follow 8 precepts. So eight precepts are not to steal, not to kill, right? Not to lie, or not to have a sexual misconduct, no intoxicant, no singing and dancing, not to wear ornaments or jewelry, not to eat after lunch till tomorrow morning, and not to sit on the high seats, not to sit on high seats. You can just sit on the low seat. So those are the 8 precepts of one day vow that is followed by a lay practitioner. Okay, so according to the monks and nuns practices, novice monk and nuns have to follow the 10 main precepts. And for fully ordained monk, they have to follow 253 precepts, and fully ordained nun has to follow 364 precepts. So those are the brief like precepts or the principal rules that all the 8 kinds of individual liberation vow has to follow, right? Okay, now let's move to the duration of vow. When we follow the 3 vows, what is the duration? How long we have to follow those vows? So here it says there are 2 types of so in the outer individual liberation vow, the duration, it differs, differs because there is also a lay practitioner who follows the vow only for a day. So that's why it differs. Those who follow only for a day is called time vow. Time, because it's limited with the time, so time vow. And those who follow until the end of their life are called established vow. Time vow and established vow are the 2 types of vow of individual liberation. So inner bodhicitta vow remains in you until you achieve the enlightenment. And the secret vow of Vajrayana, or you can call Samaya, you have to follow till the accomplishment of enlightenment. So those are the duration of vow. Then again, all these 3 vows, you will forsake all those 3 vows if you transgress the precepts. If you transgress the rules, then you will be forsaken all those 3 vows. So that's why unless you forsake the 3 vows, it will stay inside you until some of the vows until the end of your life, or some of the vows until the achievement of enlightenment. So those are the brief introduction about the duration of vow. Okay, so okay, so now let's conclude this topic of ethical discipline. So here, the various paths of Buddhism have various view, right? Various view, various way to meditate, and various way of conduct, and various way of results too. So the moral conduct, moral discipline or conduct is one of the method. So it's very important in the practice of Buddhism to understand the view and to follow the right way to meditate and to follow the right way of conduct and to achieve the result. Those are the four series or the four like session main thing, you know. So the ethical discipline, it falls under the right conduct, right? So why the right conduct is important in Buddhism, you know. So let me say that the moral conduct is the thing, is the method that simplifies all the practices, you know, that makes all the practices easier, that make all the meditation and everything, and all those things like more favorable for us to practice smoothly, you know, in our life. So that's why moral conduct is considered as one of the methods that simplifies the practice and to achieve the results. So that's why ethical discipline is considered very important. And I have already mentioned you that just in the ethical discipline, all these 5-6 perfection are included. It consists of all the 5 great perfection in that. Okay, so the question is, if you are curious in which part of moral discipline the other 5 perfection are included, then let me say that it is included in the second moral discipline, which is about benefiting the other, right? So the second moral discipline is moral discipline of the second moral discipline is the moral discipline of gathering all the virtuous action, right? So in that category, all the other 5 perfection are included. So it's like kind of what do you call disperse or like spread in all the practices, you know. So the moral conduct, the perfection of ethical discipline is dispersed, or like it is like, you know, what do you call pervasive in all the practices of Buddhism, whether it's from Tantrayana, or whether it's from Bodhisattvayana, or from the foundational yana, whatever it is. So it's all included in that certain thing. And so there should be, so it is also like that in our life, like you don't have to be like a kind of I don't say that only the religious people have to follow the moral discipline, because like all the people, like whether you are religious or whether you are you don't believe in religion, or like you are just neutral about those religious thing, it is must to have a moral discipline in our life. You know, you don't have to be religious in our mundane life. It is important, right? It's mandatory for us to have a discipline, certain kind of self-discipline in our life, you know, or otherwise we go or tilt to the extreme side, and then we face the consequences. Then by then it would be already late for us, you know, because we have the desire. So here, let me remind you again that the highest training of discipline is showed to us by Lord Buddha to eliminate the desire, right? So when we are caught by our desire, then we cannot give up our habits that is like attached with us, you know. So it's difficult for us to detach from those kind of habit, whether it's a positive or negative or neutral habit, because it's difficult because like we are tied with the desire. On that we don't have the self-control, right? And mindfulness and awareness. So that's why here there should be a more moral discipline in both the religious life or in the mundane life, to make our life more healthier, or like to make our life healthy or meaningful one, you know. So the ethic is not, people don't like to follow rules, like, right? We know that. So ethic is not just a rule, you know. Ethics are our responsibility. Ethics are humanity that dwells in us, you know. So the thing is, we have to just explore it. We have to use it. We have to exploit it, manifest it. So that's why I want to emphasize all of us to, in our life, we need self-discipline, right? Self-discipline, but self-discipline that is led by wisdom. Then again, if you are led by ignorant mind, then the discipline will become a fanatic discipline, you know. So that's why it should be led by the wisdom, and on that, we, to make our life more disciplined, we need mindfulness and awareness, which are very important. And so those mindfulness and awareness can be only achieved through our focus, you know, through our concentration. Okay, so that's all for today's teaching.